This is episode 10 with Marcus Aurelius Anderson. Your challenges don't define you. However, how you choose to handle them does. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Laugh at Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Gary Savoy. Having overcome medical trauma, I've made it my mission to uncover all of the secrets to overcoming life's challenges and living a better life. Each week, I will bring you an inspiring person or message. You'll hear from some of the most inspirational people on this planet, including those who have overcome adversity firsthand. My goal is to provide you with everything you need to conquer your challenges and to turn your struggles into strengths. While preparing to deploy with the U.S. Army, Marcus suffered a severe spinal injury that left him paralyzed from the neck down. His life was turned upside down, and after dying on the operating table twice, he was told that he would never be able to walk or use his hands again. As days quickly turned into months, he was forced into a life-changing soul-searching. He discovered he was left with two choices. He could either be a victim, or he could change his mindset. Having no other option, Marcus began looking for any lesson to be learned from his injury, and he soon discovered that his adversity was a gift. Now an author, speaker, and coach, Marcus continues to spread his message that adversity is a gift, and that adversity is something we need in life to push forward. In this episode, you'll learn why Marcus decided to join the military at age 38, and how his childhood nightmare of being paralyzed came true. You'll also learn why mental resilience and gratitude changed his life, and how seeing adversity as a gift returned movement in his hands within the same week. We also discuss how to not feed into the victim mindset and why you need to understand that you're in control of your life. Marcus also gives us the 3 questions that will give you immediate perspective and why you shouldn't allow people around you to limit you. We also talk about why we all need to be more empathetic and compassionate towards others when dealing with adversity. So without further ado, here is my interview with Marcus Aurelius Anderson. Hi, Marcus. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I think you have a very inspiring story, and you're going to help definitely bring the adversity message to the show today. So I'd like to have you start off by giving a little bit of background about your story and how you got to where you are right now.
Absolutely. I joined the military at the ripe old age of 38 years old. At that point, 35 was normally the window, but I was able to get an age release to get in there, an age waiver. What had happened in my life up to that point is I was in chiropractic school. I was, doing 25 hours of doctorate level courses. I was also bartending full time. So that was a lot of work, and I was married. And the whole reason I was working so hard is so that I could, provide something for my wife and so that we could start a family as soon as I graduated chiropractic school. I had a year and a half left till I finished my doctorate. Unfortunately, life is what happens in between the things that we have planned. And my wife, for whatever reason, didn't want to stick around. So she went ahead and left, and that was devastating. And then not long after that, my great uncle, who was a huge role model for me when I was growing up as a male role model, passed away.
Wow.
So those were 2 pretty devastating events that happened in succession. So I found myself, I didn't want to be bartending. I was sick of that lifestyle. And I honestly didn't even know if I wanted to do chiropractic school because I was giving so much. And now it felt like the reason why I was doing it was no longer there. So after my great uncle's funeral, he was in special forces. There was a huge, tremendous amount of regalia whenever he was actually being buried. And I was good until they played taps. And then I couldn't take it, and I started breaking down. A few days after that, I went down to the recruiter just to see what they would say. Went in, told them my age, and they said, well, 35 is the limit. I turned around and they said, no, let's talk. Let's see why you're here. I did a PT test. I maxed that out. I took an ASVAB. I crushed that. So the recruiter was like, well, I sign a waiver if you're in it for the right reasons. I told him why I wanted to do it. And I was off to basic training not long after that, about 6 months later. In 2012, after I got through basic training, I was in basic training at 2011. In 2012, I was serving in upstate New York with the 10th Mountain Light Infantry Division. I was injured. I had a severe spinal injury, and it left me paralyzed from the neck down.
Wow.
I there was no specific method of onset. It was just all the accumulation of, jumping out of things and basic training and infantry school and advanced individualized training and all that really tough training of my body over the years. So I woke up one morning, I tried to move my body, tried to roll out of bed, and my neck would articulate, but the rest of my body wouldn't. And at first I thought it was just because I was sore, I was stiff, or I was tired. But from the chiropractic training, I learned that I did an eval on my body quickly, and I thought, well, either I'm just having some temporary paralysis or this is permanent. And
did you have any signs leading up to this point, or was it kind of you just woke up and you felt like this?
It's funny, in retrospect, I look back on it, and this is in upstate New York in February, so it's cold as hell, and there's so much going on up there. So I thought that my hands being cold was because it was cold out there, or my feet being cold was because it was cold out there. Mm-hmm. And we would train out there for weeks at a time out in the elements, because that's what you do in the light infantry. But it got to the point where I would come back and I would take a hot shower and I still wouldn't get warm. I checked my hands and feet for frostbite. There was still no signs there. So I thought, well, I just need to get back to my bunk and get some sleep, and I'll be better in the morning. As a child, I'd had dreams of being paralyzed and being chased by something and not being able to move. And when I woke up, that's what it felt like. It was my worst nightmare come to life.
Wow.
Eventually I was rushed to the hospital, and they did an MRI on me, and it was just like you see in the movies where they've got you on a gurney and they're running and they're poking and prodding on you, and they got light shining on you, and everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. They find out that I have a ruptured disc in my neck at C5. And that's the same nerve level that Christopher Reeve was paralyzed at years ago. So the disc had ruptured and it exploded. So it was pressing onto my spinal cord, and that's what was causing my paralysis. And they said, well, we're going to take this out of you. We're going to do a discectomy and put a bunch of metal in your neck. And I said, oh, that's great. So I'll be able to walk again. And crickets. They couldn't tell me anything. So that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to go under the knife, and there's a dozen people waiting for me. And I just heard this noose, and now I'm getting really weary. And they said, listen, don't worry about it. There's nothing you can do right now. Just let's get through the surgery and we'll recover later. And they were right. I couldn't do anything about it. So they wheel me in there in the cold operating room, and the anesthesia on me, and I count down from 99. I get to about 97. And then it's very cold and it's very dark. And I wake up in the ICU, confused, discombobulated, thinking that maybe I'm AWOL, or where am I at? Is this a dream? And the nurse comes in. She's like, well, welcome back to the living, Mr. Anderson. I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? So I'm on crazy medications and stuff, so I wasn't really sure what the big deal was. I try to speak and my throat is very raw. And then I'm in and out of sleep for about a day, and then eventually the surgeon comes in and he sits at the foot of my bed. At this point, I'm still paralyzed and I have my neck brace on, so what I was able to move, I can't even move that, so I'm fixed in the fixed position. Mm-hmm. He says, well, you had us worried there for a while. And I try to talk and I can't because my voice is just raw. And I kind of look at him confused. He says, no, we lost you a couple times.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, what do you mean you lost me? How? I'm right there on the table. How can you lose me? And I guess he can read my face. He's like, don't worry about it. He's like, you're lucky you get to tell the tale. You died twice and you got to come back.
Wow. And at this point, you can't even speak. So what was going through your mind?
Well, I found out too that they rushed a bunch of tubes through my throat trying to save my life after I went down, and that's why my throat was raw. Okay. I'm completely flabbergasted. Even if I could speak, it wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't be able to say anything.
Right.
And he keeps talking, and I kind of hear what he's saying, but I'm still fixated on that previous statement. So he eventually just says, listen, just get some sleep, and I'll come talk to you later on. They told me before the operation that if I didn't walk within the first few days, that meant that I had permanent nerve damage, which I did have a lot of nerve damage, obviously. But they said that, if you don't walk within a few days, that you're going to be paralyzed for the rest of your life. So trying to digest the notion that I'd already, died and come back, and then trying to desperately hold on to the possibility of walking again, because they told me if I wasn't able to walk by the time I left the ICU, that it was pretty much a done deal. And when they took me back to base, that's whenever I started going through that very much a depression, trying to figure out what was going to happen to my body and my life next.
Right. So you went back to base. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what they sent me back to convalesce. And that was the idea. So when they told me I wasn't going to walk again and that this was what I had to pretty much work with, I went through the common, there's 5 stages of grief, right? So I was in denial. I was like, no, I'm going to beat this. I got in the military when I was 38 and I beat guys half my age in basic training. So, this isn't going to stop me. And I died and I came back, I'm invincible. And
right.
I had a lot of enthusiasm initially, but as days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, eventually I started going to that point where, I got very angry. I was mad as hell. I was mad at everyone around me. Of course, I was projecting because I was mad at myself because I felt like I turned 40 years old in a bed, paralyzed. And most people, when they're 40, they're looking back on their lives and they're married and they have 2.5, dogs and they have all the white picket fence and the kids and everything is perfect. And you're looking back on your 401k and you're paying off your mortgage. And here I was, I had nothing to show for it. Literally, I had no money. I had no wife. I was divorced. I was completely broke. And this thing that I had committed my entire life and purpose and soul to was pretty much out of my reach now. So I was left with nothing.
Do you have any feelings of regret since you decided to join the military and what happened to you was caused while training?
I did because the reason why I was able to do so well in it was because it was an individual thing. So the harder I worked, the more that I would get recognition, the more I would get promoted, the more people, recognize me for my excellence, because you can be in great shape and you can be a great shot and you can be motivated. But if you're all 3 of those things in the infantry, you are leadership potential, and that's what they want to do. Especially at my age, I knew that I was really batting against a lot of the odds in the process. So that was my motivation, was to kind of show everybody that I could do it, including myself. And then to be in that position where I can't do anything, I went into a very, as you can imagine, a very deep depression. I was suicidal, but I couldn't act on it. And, luckily I look back on it now and I'm very happy that I didn't act on it. I'm trying to figure out ways to do it even then.
At this point, did you have a recovery plan? Were you acting on that? Did you have doctors around you or some type of a support system to kind of help you get some sort of movement back?
Yeah, what they were trying to do is, what they would do is it was just enough to kind of keep the blood in my appendages. So they would, once a week they would send somebody in and they would put my hands it's almost like a bicycle kind of movement to try to keep movement in my arms. And of course they would have somebody that would actually do the movement for me. The same thing with my legs. They were just trying to keep blood in there, trying to keep it moving. All the muscles were atrophied, all the muscle that I had. It's like I lost all my muscle and it turned into fat. It was like, horrible to see your body deteriorate like that. And I got to the point where they would just kind of prop me up in bed and they would turn on Netflix and leave. And eventually I got to where I was like, you know what? Don't turn it on. Just leave me alone. Just turn off the lights and let me think about this. So for 3 months I did that. And for 3 months I was angry. I was livid. And, I knew I'd done martial arts my entire life, and I knew about mental resilience. I couldn't sit there and just, had this poor me situation. But I also knew that until I actually got to the bottom of this, there was no way I could come back from it. When I started trying to find things to be grateful for, I knew that's where I needed to start. But even then, I was grateful I should have been grateful to be alive, but I wasn't.
Right.
I was, because I didn't feel like I was living. I felt like I was existing. And when I kept thinking about me, and I, it was really hard for me to get over that. But what eventually happened was one morning I woke up and I was tired of being angry. And I was like, well, if I can't be happy about or grateful about what's going on with me now, what else positive happened? What the hell is this all about? What am I supposed to learn from this? There's got to be something in here. The universe slaps you in the face for a reason, to get your attention. And I wasn't paying attention to something. I couldn't see what it was. And finally I saw that because we were preparing to deploy and they kept pushing the deployment back. If this had happened while I was in country with other people, deployed with my my team, there's a very good possibility that I would have gotten them killed. I would have gotten killed. I could have got the people
Right.
on the Chinook killed. I could have got the medical people killed. So what I did, instead of thinking about myself, I thought about them, and I was grateful that they weren't hurt, grateful that they weren't killed trying to save me. And once I had that very small thing to build on, then I could begin to build some gratitude. And then I got to the point where I was grateful for not only the bed that I may never leave or the room I can't get out of, but for everything that ever happened in my life, including the negative stuff.
Did you use that as your purpose to recover?
And that's exactly what it was. The minute a week, almost to the day that I decided to see my adversity as a gift instead of a curse, I started getting movement back in my hands.
No way.
It's exactly what happened. And here's the big point though. That happened. And as soon as that happened, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I got I got this. And I started getting some movement back in my hands and my feet. And all of a sudden, leaps and bounds.
Yeah, of course.
And I got away from that gratitude of everything around me. And I started thinking about me. And I started thinking about, I can't wait till I get out of here. And I can't wait till I go on to this next part. And I regressed. I went almost back to square one. And that's when it was just ripped my heart out. But then I realized I've been here before. I've done this before. I just went down this road. So I went back down it again and said, no, I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to figure out what this is. The universe bitch slaps you for a reason. Let's see what it is. And sure enough, slowly it started coming back. And ever since then, every day, I'm grateful. With gratitude, people, they want to pick and choose. They want to cherry pick the stuff that they're happy about. They're happy about this, but not this. They're grateful for the stuff that makes them feel good, but they're not grateful for the other stuff. And what we have to do is you have to understand that if you can be grateful for something that is not something that you see as advantageous, as well as being grateful for something that you absolutely love, then you will never, ever be a victim in your life. You will always be surrounded by everything that you do as a blessing. So if you look at something that doesn't seem like it's helping you, think of it as a way to shine a light on your weaknesses. And this is what forces you to improve. And obviously, if it's something that's positive in your life that you love, then be even that much more grateful for it.
So how do you develop that mindset that you're talking about of being grateful for things and not allowing it to be a victim?
The victim mindset is very difficult, and it's self-perpetuating because once we start kind of believing our own BS, then we feed into it. What you have to do is you have to be brutally honest with yourself, but with that brutal honesty comes ferocious optimism. So by understanding that, I'm going to be accountable for everything that's happening right now. I may not be able to change anything, but if I can get past where I'm at right now and accept myself the way I am, 100%, flaws and all, now I have a beginning to where I can start trying to move forward. So understanding that you are the one that's in control. The definition of anxiety is choosing not to choose. And a lot of people in that victim mindset, they try to allow other people to make choices for them, and they're giving the power away. And once you're in that situation, you will easily be victimized by anything else around you. So once you start making a decision to actually act, whatever that action is, act on it. That in and of itself is what will defeat the anxiety, and it will defeat a lot of that victim mentality. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it's not this like perfect articulation straight up. It always undulates. But the idea is to make that decision and to start acting, and then start pivoting, and then start adapting as you go through it. But if you just sit there in that position where you kind of wait and you have this woe is me, it's never going to help you. If I were to drop you off on a desert island and tell you that I'm going to be back in 24 hours, that's an example of the victim mentality, because people will sit on their ass and wait for somebody to come get them. But if I drop you off and say, listen, I'm never coming back, figure it out. Now, what do? You're forced to act. You look for food. You look for water. You look for shelter. And that's what we have to do in our lives.
Yeah, I think that's a really good story you use there, because I feel like a lot of people, they might have goals set for themselves, but and there might be some pieces of those goals that are uncomfortable for them. And instead of putting themselves in that uncomfortable position and trying to make some progress, it's easier to block that discomfort out by binging Netflix for a few hours each night. So how do you start to take action? I mean, you were paralyzed and you realized that gratitude was helping you. So how did you develop that mindset, and how did your gratitude mindset, play into your progress and you being able to move more and function more and Can you kind of go into that a little bit of how someone who's struggling just to achieve their everyday goals, how they can get some progress?
It can be something, it starts with very, very small steps, baby steps, anything that you can do that's significant. So, whether it be something as simple as choosing the right food to eat, waking up and choosing what to be, grateful for. A lot of people, when I coach people, for example, a lot of people, like you were mentioning before, they have goals, but they either don't reverse engineer it, or the goal is very abstract. I want to be happy. I want to be rich or financially successful or whatever it is. But the minute you can be very specific and you know exactly what you want and it's crystal clear about what you want to do, what you're trying to work towards, that's what helps you. That's what makes you more focused. And that's what makes you get to the point where you can start making those decisions. And again, the classic stoicism, you cannot control what happens around you, but you can always control how you react to it. Viktor Frankl says what in the Man's Search for Meaning, he's like, between action and reaction, there is a place where we can actually start thinking about what we want to do. And that's where we have to live. We have to start living that area of, I'm not going to just, again, be a victim. I'm not going to have this reactionary mindset where I'm simply putting out fires and going from, dramatic situation to other dramatic situation. You have to decide. So again, with my situation, I decided that I was going to be grateful for what happened in the mornings. I decided I was going to be grateful for that person that walked in. And even if all I got was this much movement back, which is a very small amount, I was better off than where I was. The martial arts teach you a lot of stuff about resilience. And in my TEDx talk, I talk about this. And, if you're listening, you're within the sound of our voices right now, that means that you have electricity. That means you have, access to the internet. That probably means you also have water. It probably means you have food. It probably means you have a place to sleep at night. You're better off than 3/4 of the population in the world right now. They don't have that. And I'm not saying that to try to guilt shame people or first world problems people. But what I am saying is acknowledge that. Don't wipe it away. Don't act like it's not a big deal. Because if you didn't have that, you would be praying for it right now. So be grateful for the things that we do have. And after you've taken that gratitude, now you can move forward and say, okay, what else can I work towards that I can be grateful for? So again, whether it be that person that you have a conversation with that you may not agree with them, but again, they kind of point in a direction of something to make you understand that maybe they're right. Maybe there's a reason why I'm disagreeing with this. Maybe this is a shortcoming on my part. Maybe they're saying something that shines a mirror towards me that I don't like about myself. Maybe I'm projecting. Understand those as opportunities to learn. And there's an opportunity to learn in any situation. My LinkedIn account, for example, got taken down. They said that there was some traffic on it that was not mine. And then they said that it was hacked. So, I had like a whole lot of followers and I had written all these articles and all this stuff and
all gone.
It got pulled. Yeah, all gone.
It's terrible.
So what do I do? Can I sit there and cry about it? It's like, no. I mean, I just build back up and I just keep moving forward. I do everything in this like adversity scale, right? So 10 is like heaven and like 10 is hell and 0 is like heaven on earth. And if you start looking at everything, you start comparing it to that and you say, what's the worst thing I've ever been through in my life? And then you compare what you're going through currently that you're complaining about, like work or a job or the weather. In the grand scheme of things, you see quickly that, honestly, it's probably about a 3 out of 10. And when you're honest with yourself with that, then that perspective helps you understand that, you can do a lot more than what you're doing now. You may just be making more out of it than what it really is, making a mountain out of a molehill. So suck it up, push forward, but be honest with yourself in the process and understand that there's a lot more that you can do with what you're doing currently. We're stronger than what we give ourselves credit for every single time.
Right.
And adversity is what spurs us forward to learn that. And it makes us ask more of ourselves, even when we don't feel like it.
I agree with you. I think a lot of what you're talking about has a lot to do with perspective. And just from everything that you've talked about so far, I'd like to understand, why perspective matters so much.
Bruce Lee said that there are no limits, there are only plateaus. And that if we have the right perspective and we can pull back far enough, we can see that. But again, with perspective, we are so close, it's hard for us to understand that. So in my TEDx talk, I talk about it. I have 3 questions that gives everybody immediate perspective. And the 3 questions are, if you woke up tomorrow, paralyzed from the neck down, what do you wish you would have accomplished with your life? What regrets would you harbor? And then the third one is, if you were able to get your ability to walk again back, how would you live your life differently? And those questions and those things that come to mind immediately as soon as you're in those situations, those show you what's really important, what's truly a priority, and what's truly significant in your life. So all the stuff that's unnecessary, all the stuff that's superfluous, you trim the fat, and you understand that, you know what, like me, laying there in that bed, I realized that a lot of the stuff that I've been doing for in my life, I've been doing to make other people proud of me or to impress other people, or I was doing what society thought that I should be doing. But after I got hurt and I'm lying there in that bed, I thought, well, now I know what I want to do. I'm just afraid I'll never be able to do it. So that gave me a hell of a lot of urgency. And that's why I'm doing what I do today.
I like that answer. I think so. I have an interesting question for you. I think a lot of people will hear this and they'll love the message, but it comes down to application, right?
Yes.
So, and a lot of people, and myself included before my surgery, and everything that I went through, and maybe this is true for you too. Um, I would hear of motivational speakers and inspirational stories like this, but I just felt like, it was never going to apply to me. So how does the everyday person who, maybe struggling with, say, like a relationship or a financial situation or a job, and not something so severe and something that takes you literally to rock bottom as being paralyzed, how do they develop this mindset, even if it's just, for small goals or little steps, little achievements, like you mentioned?
Yeah, that is the difficulty, because the reality is we need some form of adversity in our lives to push us forward, whether it be, a deadline or something like that. What we have to do is we have to actually find that urgency within ourselves and give us something that's concrete that we have to work towards. If you're in a relationship that you're not happy with, that adversity may be the conversation you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a job that you're not happy with, or you think that you're worthy of a raise, but you're afraid to ask for it, that's your adversity. Understand that adversity is there to force us to improve. It's, I said it's like gravity. It's an inevitable thing that we're going to run into every day. And if we see adversity as an opportunity to learn, if we try to find the lesson in anything that's happening to us, we can do that. And even if we're in a situation that absolutely sucks, because it does, and we're like, I don't know what I can learn from this, the lesson may be that you shouldn't find yourself in that situation ever again.
Mm.
So now backtrack and say, well, why did I get in this situation? Did I have a victim mentality? Did I have a defeated mentality? Did I have a lackadaisical, like mediocre mentality where, I'm doing just enough to get by, and I'm making money, but I'm not making as much as I want. But hey, I'm going to binge on Netflix, or I'm going to, go drink a bunch of beer and watch, sports on the weekend. And we can do that. I'm not saying that that's bad. What I'm saying is the minute you start actually committing yourself 100% to something and don't hold anything back, we all subconsciously have a little bit of reserve because we're afraid to commit 100%, because we're afraid if we do that and we fail, that will be crushing to our soul. But there is something magical that happens when you have a specific thing that you want it so much that you give everything in your spirit and your life and your body to. Once you do that, you'll be amazed at how other things happen in your life and other opportunities open up and all these other doors start opening because you want it. But the minute you start saying, oh, well, I tried that, but it wasn't for me. Well, then you didn't really try, probably.
Right.
Chances are you weren't committing fully. And there's but one level of commitment, and not total. Anything else than that is halfway at best.
So is it safe to say, as a summary, that the easiest way to use your adversity is to find a greater purpose and to set like small, actionable, and even achievable goals that you can kind of mark progress on?
Absolutely. A lot of people practice gratitude like in the morning or in the evening. And what I tell a lot of people to do is, practice some adversity. And what I mean by that is, you go through those three things every day that you're happy for, that you're grateful for. But like I said before, if you can think of a few things that day that you overcame, and it could be something as simple as saying, instead of taking the elevator, I'm going to walk up the stairs. Instead of eating this sugary donut, I'm going to decide to either fast today or drink some water or eat something healthy for me. Instead of allowing this person to treat me in a certain manner, because what we allow is what will continue, I'm going to stand up for myself and set up this parameter and say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to let that happen anymore. The minute we start doing those things, that's when everything else starts happening. It's like the pebble, in the water, and it creates the big ripple effect. But if we never make that first movement, if we never start finding that first string to pull on, we will find ourselves always in that same situation, and we don't want to be there.
I agree with you. So with everything that you've learned, before joining the military, during your recovery and after, how much has your life changed just by, the mental resilience that you've developed? Do you find that you're achieving more in your life now, and the universe is coming to you and providing you with what you're asking it for?
I find it is. It's interesting. When I was younger, I kind of had this mindset, but then as I got, into high school, into college, and into jobs and stuff, I kind of lost my, the source or my signal or whatever you want to call your true purpose or your true person. And I got caught up in all that minutia. Now that I'm back in a position where I can actually see clearly and I'm up above kind of where I was, metaphorically speaking, it's helped me understand that if you actually go after the things you want to go after, you can probably get a lot more accomplished than what you give yourself credit for, like I said. But you have to be willing to push. You have to be willing to actually ask more of yourself. You have to be willing to ask yourself the question, is that what I really want, or am I just compromising right now? Because once we start compromising into small things, we compromise on everything. And then before you know it, you surround yourself with other people that have compromised. And they say, don't worry, come on in. We did the same thing. We let all of our dreams and goals and ambitions go to hell too. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Just come over here and, again, binge on Netflix or whatever this entertainment is. And again, I'm not saying that stuff is bad, but if you start asking more and demanding more of yourself, you will start getting a lot more from yourself. And recognizes like. So that's the whole reason why you'll start finding people that are more like-minded, people that are more in your sort of arena, as it were. A lot of the people that we grow up with, or the people that we go to school with, most of it's based on proximity, but not necessarily about like compatibility.
Right.
And so once you start pulling away from that group and you start getting your friends that are like, oh, were you too good for us? Or, oh, you're going to be, you're going to write a book, or you're going to be a speaker, or you're going to join the military, or start your own podcast, or whatever the case may be. Those people are uncomfortable because you're breaking away from what they're doing. And they see that you came from the same place, and they see you trying to get better. Don't allow those people to, dissuade you. In the end, the only person you are accountable to is yourself. And the only person that you really have to answer to is that person in the mirror. And at the end of the night, if you feel comfortable with what you're doing and you know that you're giving everything that you have, there's nothing else you could possibly ask for.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think to the people listening too, there are, if you're looking to reach outside of your comfort zone and you don't have necessarily the support around you, there's so many different communities that, you can reach out to and become a part of to get that support system, whether it's networking, or listening to podcasts such as these, watching speeches, such as yours, or joining maybe a coaching program. There's so many different ways that you don't just have to give up on your dreams because of the people surrounding you gave up on theirs.
That's exactly it. They say that we're the average of the 5 people that we surround ourselves with, but with social media in these days, or even reading a book, if you want to surround yourself with Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs, you read 4 books. You are around those people now.
Yeah.
And your mindset's the same way. If your 5 ideas of mindset are that you're going to be grateful, you're going to be happy, you're going to work hard, you're going to have resilience, and you're going to have compassion and love, those are the 5 things you will find in your life. But if you find yourself victimized, if you find yourself unhappy, if you find yourself bitter, arrogant, and angry, that's what you're always going to find yourself around as well. So pick wisely, decide, and move with commitment, and you'll be amazed at what can happen in your life.
If you're looking for change, do you suggest changing one of those at a time?
I do, because in today's technology, there's a lot of information and it's easy to get flooded, but it's hard to actually take it in. So like a child that goes to a buffet, they can eat all the food that they want and it looks really great, but they're probably going to get sick and they're not going to actually be able to digest any of it. So be selective about what you want to put into your brain, whether it be content, whether it be a book or whatever, and try to actually take that in. I'm the kind of person that I understand a lot of people can read, a book a week, and that's okay. But for me, I like to read that book. I like to digest it. I like to go back to it again. I'd like to get about 10 pages in and then think about it and see how I can apply it and put it through my, philosophical filter to see how I can use it and see what common threads I can put together with what I already believe, or maybe I don't believe, and question my beliefs that are being, pushed by this book, for example. Once you do that and you have something small, then you can build on it. But if it's something that's not solid, if you got a bunch of concepts that are kind of vague or are not grounded in something that's pragmatic, you're going to find yourself stopping a lot more than you need to.
Right. Speaking of books, I know your biggest thing is that you preach that adversity is a gift. Do you mind talking about a little bit about that? And I know you also wrote a book, I think, on the same basis, right?
I did. My TEDx talk is called "The Gift of Adversity," and that's kind of what I talk about. It, I look at adversity. There's a book by Stephen Pressfield that's called "The War of Art," and he talks about something that he calls resistance, and he capitalizes it with an R, like it's an entity. And that's the way I look at adversity, with a capital A. And the TEDx talk kind of goes through and talks about me, and we don't have a lot of time to speak. I have to make my kind of point, and then I have to point to other people to show that they've gone through a lot more than what I have,
Right.
and that they've overcome it. With my book, The Gift of Adversity, Overcoming Paralysis and Pain to Find Purpose, I'm able to kind of dive deeper and to tell more of the story and to tell more of the lessons. So I talk about being on safari in South Africa, being on a chiropractic mission trip in the Dominican Republic, all of the things that I kind of, laying in the bed, it made me realize what was really important and what wasn't. And a lot of the lessons that I kind of forgotten about came back. They came rushing back quickly. So I tried to give a lot of the lessons in a story format that will not only be inspirational and entertaining, but actually very useful for anybody, no matter what the situation is.
Did you find yourself, while you were writing the book, did you find yourself struggling because of, the flashbacks of the different points in your life? And I'm sure some of the things that you wrote about in the book, you had a lot of time when you were laying on that hospital bed. I'm sure you replayed those memories over and over in your head.
Yeah, it's cathartic, but it is difficult. I remember somebody asking me, they're like, "What's the most important book you've ever read, or the most life-changing book you ever read?" And in my mind, I thought, well, the book that I wrote, not because it's arrogant, but because when you put yourself under a microscope for over a year and you start looking back and you start seeing what happened, the first third of the book is like my story and about kind of what happened. And then I talk about the pragmatic, specific steps that I took to get to that point where, okay, now I'm starting over. I've had 40 years of life on this planet. Here's what I'm going to do differently so that I can get where I'm going to go quickly and not waste any more time and any more effort. And that's what happened. And, I wrote 500 pages and I had to pare it down to 270 pages, so, which is great. But I wanted to make sure, I was originally going to write two different books, but I knew that may be asking a lot of people. So I'd rather just give all the quality that I can and all the value that I can in one book. And that way you can pick up the book and you can look at certain things in there that you can use as inspiration or motivation, but other stuff that you can look in there and say, I didn't think about that, or this is going to make me better at what I'm doing, or this is going to make me act faster. So whether it be the 80-20 principle or Occam's razor, all these ideals come into play, and they all dovetail into the idea of simplicity, focus, and stripping away the inessentials, as Bruce Lee would say.
I like that. So for people that were looking to connect with you, where can they find you? Your social accounts, your website? I know I can link up the book too in the show notes, but where can people find you?
Absolutely. My website is marcusaureliusanderson.com. Just one word, my name. They can find me on all the social media like that, from LinkedIn to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you go to Amazon, you can find my book, The Gift of Adversity. You can find it there on Amazon, and you can get it in the hard book cover, or the actual physical book, or you can actually get it in Kindle if that works better for you. And the idea is I want to try to help as many people as I possibly can. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when you reached out to me, it was kind of a perfect fit, because that's kind of what this whole podcast is about, is teaching people to cultivate that mindset of, adversity is a gift. So I thought it was a perfect fit to have you on.
I couldn't agree more.
Usually I ask two questions. They're the final questions, but I feel like the first one, we've already kind of got your definition of adversity and kind of what it means to you. So I'm just going to ask you the last one today. What are 3 tips that you could give someone who's facing adversity in their life right now?
I would kind of harken back to what I said before, the idea that there's something to be learned from this. So try to look at it as a lesson. Again, look at it as a gift instead of a curse. But also start thinking about the things in that adversity that you want to overcome. We're only as strong as the adversity that we overcome, is what it comes down to. So use it as a way to push. So almost the way when we lift weights, it makes us stronger. It's the same idea. It's something that pushes us back. And then the last thing is, if all else fails and you feel like you're stuck, ask yourself this: what will happen if I don't change what I'm doing? Where am I going to be in 5 years if I don't change what I'm doing? What am I going to be in 10 years if I don't change what I'm doing? think about that. And sometimes thinking in the future like that will give you enough urgency to get off your ass and actually start moving. And again, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be many points where you go to a plateau where you hit a ceiling. It's natural. You're supposed to do that. That is part of it. Don't give up when you hit something tough. See that as the next place. See that as the next phase. And be grateful for it, because that means you're making progress. That's your indicator. That's your compass that you're getting better.
Right. Step back, change your perspective, and start moving forward again.
Absolutely. We don't have to go through the mountain. You can go over it, you can go around it, but understand that there are many paths to the top of the mountain, and some may take longer than others, but understand that you can get there. As long as the only way that a man can be defeated is if he dies or if he gives up.
Right. I think another good part I'm just kind of thinking about right now is don't compare yourself to others. Everyone has a different length of their journey. Everyone has a different journey.
Yes.
And they start at a different place, and each person has a different destination, but you can't compare yourself to somebody else, because the comparison trap is not a good place to be.
It's not. And adversity, first of all, like you say, it's not a competition. Second of all, it's relative. So I've had people reach out to me on social media that said there was a girl that had been, molested since she was a child. Is that adversity greater than mine? In my mind, I think that's horrendous. I really empathize and feels horrible for that person. So it's not like, oh, well, I went through this physical part and they went through this physical part, or this psychological damage. It's a human condition. And that's why the more adversity that you go through, the more empathy and compassion you should build, because you've been there. So help the other person around you that's going through that. See those signs. Understand when that person is mad about something, they're always mad. There's something else going on there. So try to be compassionate. Try to talk to that person. Before you know it, maybe eventually you have a conversation and they tell you, hey, it's like, this happened to me. And all of a sudden, by just being simply grateful for what you have, you give that gratitude to that person. And now you change their life too.
Right. I think that's actually a really good point that you made. I think just as a whole, I think we'd be in a much better place if we were more compassionate with others.
Absolutely. I think that compassion and gratitude are, two sides of the same coin. I think that they go hand in hand.
I agree with you. I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge you for everything that you do, everything that you've been able to overcome, joining the military. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And then also just being able to overcome everything that you've gone through, and the purpose that you've created, and making everything bigger than just yourself. You're taking everything that you learned, the lessons, and you've done a TEDx, you've written a book, you're coaching, you're speaking, and you're helping impact the lives of so many, and just trying to teach that message that adversity is a gift. So I just want to thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm humbled and honored by your kind words.
Hey everyone, if you really enjoyed this episode, then make sure you head over to iTunes and leave a review. It's the easiest way for the show to be found by others and help change their lives. If you're looking to connect with Marcus, including finding his book, any of the show notes, or you want to watch his TEDx speak, then make sure you head over to laughatadversity.com/10.